have the history of the Jews from the destruction of Jerusalem to the present time. This book was published in 1818. What I'm going to show you, because I know a lot of you got questions about the so-called white man that calls himself Jewish. Does this book, published in 1818, discuss them? Let's see. I'm going over to page 167, chapter 11. Let's go down to the highlighted area. The 8th century is, I'm here. The 8th century is celebrated by Jewish writers for the conversion of Khazar. Some books call these people Khazars. Okay, but it's talking about the conversion of the white man to being Jewish. The conversion of Khazar, a pagan prince, to their belief. According to their accounts, he became dissatisfied with the religion of his people and progenitors, meaning forefathers, and conversed on this subject with philosophers, Christians, Mohammedans, meaning Muslims, and Jews. These Jews are black Jews. At length, a learned rabbi convinced him that Judaism was the only true religion, to which all others were but as the shadow to the substance, or the picture to the living original. Khazar, therefore, abjured his former tenets, and after he was initiated in the belief and ceremonies of the Jews, employed himself in converting his subjects. Look at this. He sent for the most learned men of this nation from all countries to instruct his people, and from that time the original Jews were held in high estimation. So this book is giving you the history of the white man converting to becoming a Jew. Now continue watching, pay close attention. All right, this is The Jews, A Study of Race and Environment by Maurice Fishberg. This was published in 1911. Notice page 64. All right, it says, these fair-haired Jews created a problem for anthropologists. It is a question whence these Indo-Germanic Jews, as Virchow called them, have found their way into the midst of a dark, complexioned race like the Jews. Wow. So the scholars know the original Jews were dark complexion, meaning black. All right. Light and truth collected from the Bible in ancient and modern history, containing the universal history of the colored and the Indian race from the creation of the world to the present time, by R.B. Robert Benjamin Lewis. I'm going to page 354 in this book. Y'all know I really like this book here. And we're going to read about Jeremiah. I'm starting right here. Jeremiah the prophet was the son of Hilkiah. The words of Jeremiah to his friends. Thus saith the prophet, chapter 8, verse 21. I am black. Here he describes himself to be black. Lamentations chapter 5, verse 10. Our skin was black like an oven, meaning burned in a furnace. Here he describes his people. They are black unto or on the ground, mourning because of the terrible famine. Jeremiah 14, that's verse 2. Our necks are under persecution. We labor and have no rest. We have given a hand to the Egyptians, meaning our slave masters, and to the Assyrians, another slave master, to be satisfied with bread. So this book shows you that they knew, according to the scriptures, the Israelites were, are, and will always be a black people. Fact. Commentaries on Hebrew and Christian mythology by Judge Parrish B. Ladd of the San Francisco Bar. I believe that this guy is an atheist and doesn't believe in the scriptures at all, but that's all right. Copyrighted 1896. So, let's go. I'm going over to page 198. All right. There's going to be a little bit of reading here. All right. I'm going to start here. In the time of the first crusading spirit, this is referring to the Crusades. In the cities of Treves, Metz, Mainz, Worms, Spires, Strasbourg, and other smaller places, the streets were deluged with the blood of the Jews and other unbelievers at the hands of these pious warriors. So the Crusaders was against the Jews and anybody else that did not believe in the Catholic Church. The Jews were expelled from Vienna in 1196. These are meaning the practicing Jews, those black Jews that kept the commandments, were expelled from Vienna in 1196, from Mecklenburg in 1225, from Breslau in 1226, from Brandenburg in 1243, from Frankfurt in 1241, from Munich in 1285, from Nuremberg in 1380, from Prague in 1391, and from Ratisbon in 1476. From 1346 to 1350, the Jews were murdered by thousands until the race in Germany became nearly extinct. In Switzerland, the Christians commenced to persecute the Jews about the middle of the 14th century, and in the 15th, they were expelled from the principal cities in that country. I'm jumping now to the highlight. When the Moors invaded Spain, the Jews lent a helping hand. They looked, because the Jews and the Moors looked the same. You had Jews that were Moors, which were Muslims, and you had Moors that were Jews. I hope y'all understand what I'm saying. And I showed you the other classes where they looked and dressed very similar. You could not tell them apart. When the Moors invaded Spain, this is around 711 AD, the Jews lent a helping hand. So glad were they to escape Christian tortures. They were made equals wherever the Moors held sway. Okay, let's jump down. Watch this. I'll start here. In 1391 and 92, in 5 provinces held by the followers of Christ, untold numbers of Jews were murdered and their property was confiscated to the church. Escape, says one historian, was possible only through flight to Africa. So what do y'all think these Jews were? You think that these Jews being murdered that had to escape to Africa, you think these were Caucasians? No, they were not. These were black men, black women. It said, or by accepting baptism at the point of the sword. Let's go to page 199. All right, I'm here. In speaking of this affair, one writer says the fate of the Jews in Spain during the 15th century, that's the 1400s. The 15th century refers to the 1400s. Beggars description. He further says persecutions, violent conversions, massacre, the torture of the Inquisition. We read of nothing else. At length, the hour of final horror came when in 1492, this is the same year Columbus discovered America, allegedly, or the Caribbean, when in 1492 an edict was issued from those pious rulers, Ferdinand and Isabella, that's King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella of Spain, by which the Jews were given 4 months within which to leave the country empty-handed, to accept baptism, or to suffer death. Let's jump down. These pious men ordered their victims to be burned to death. This the Jews well knew to be the fate of those who failed to leave their homes and country or become Christians. All right, page 200. I'm just jumping down. Some 80,000 bought of the Christian sovereign of Portugal a stopover privilege until they could earn money enough to go on. So they went from Spain to Portugal. Okay, 80,000 of them. Watch this. After the lapse of the time for their exit, Many lingered, being unable to get away. King Emmanuel, in the tenderness of his Christian heart, sold into slavery many of the more common Jews. So, who do you think these Jews were that were sold into slavery? These were black men, black women, sold into slavery many of the more common Jews, and by an edict he ordered all the children under 14 years of age of the better class to be taken from their parents and turned over to the Christian brothers to be brought up in the true faith. So they took the black children of the Jews and made them slaves to their Christian brothers. Wow, I'm going to show you that in a minute. This piece of refined cruelty drove many of the mothers to destroy their offspring rather than let them fall into the hands of their persecutors. Their persecutors were Christian brothers. This piece of refined cruelty drove many of the mothers to destroy their offspring rather than let them fall into the hands of their persecutors. Those who accepted forced baptism, but who for the most part secretly adhered to their old faith of keeping the commandments, were constantly on the rack of torture. Then they get into the filth of Luther and Calvin. That's for another lesson. But I want to show you on this lesson also how these Christian brothers, they sold into slavery many of the more common Jews, and by an edict he ordered all the children under 14 years of age of the better class to be taken from their parents and turned over to the Christian brothers. They did this not only in Portugal and Spain, they did it in Denmark, Italy. I'm going to show you the pictures. I've showed y'all before, but it's such a good thing. I'm going to show you this history needs to come out. All right. Y'all remember this book, Image of the Black in Western Art, edited by David Byman. This guy, he ain't right in the head. And Henry Louis Gates Jr., I think this brother's asleep when this demon David Byman was orchestrating and writing this book. Let's go on inside here. All right. Here's one of the young men, Christian slave. They made our sons and daughters Christian slaves. Look, there's a young man right there, Christian slave. Look, they made our sons Christian slaves. I don't want y'all to think I'm making anything up. I'm not making nothing up. We read the history just now. Christian slave. Christian slave. Look, Christian slave. Christian slave. Christian slave. Gotta put her damn jewelry on. The hell is this? Christian slave. Here we gotta put that damn jewelry on again. The hell is this? Christian slave. Well, you need to bust upside the head with the mirror. Christian slave. And here's a picture in Portugal. I want you to notice all the blacks here. You got these two blacks cooning for the Portuguese man and woman. Cooning, singing to them like they do in church. Okay, you got a Christian black here with the sign of the, I always forget the name of this order. Order of Santiago. That's this guy. Got two blacks here walking around. Their black clothes on. You got Amalek over there. You got a black man being tortured during the Inquisition right here. You got black women all over the place. Let's look at all the black faces. They bust this young man upside the head. Let me see if I can focus that. With a stick and carrying him away. Look at all the black people here. In Lisbon, that's Portugal, slaves outnumber free Portuguese, and anonymous entirely declared that the cities resemble games of chess with equal numbers of white and black people. Here's another one, Christian slave, when they took our children. Christian slave. And you talking about racial reconciliation. What the hell is wrong with you? Christian slave. Christian slave. Christian slave. Christian slave. And they gave us forced baptism. They forced our children to be Christians, following the white Christ, white supremacy. You need to be ashamed of yourselves. Christian slave. Christian slave. And they gave us forced baptism. They forced our children to be Christians, following the white Christ, white supremacy. You need to be ashamed of yourselves. Christian slave. Christian slave. Christian slave. Christian slave. All right. Back to commentaries on the Hebrew. Page 202. The Jews were driven out of Protestant Bavaria in 1553. Now these are the practicing Jews that kept the commandments. They were driven out by Protestant Bavaria in 1553, out of Brandenburg in 1573, and the Protestant city of Hamburg in 1730. They were persecuted in the most inhuman manner. So you Protestants are a bunch of bastards yourselves. You love to try to disassociate yourselves with the Catholics and say it was the Catholics doing all the persecuting. Nah, you bunch of liars, you bunch of demons. You Protestant whites was persecuting us as well. It says, regarding our people, they were persecuted in the most inhuman manner. And during the whole of the 17th and a part of the 18th centuries, Protestant Germany increased its persecutions. Let's jump down. This part goes into that demon Martin Luther. But I wanted this part here. At the present time, the Jews have had their property confiscated and are being driven out of Russia by the Christian emperor of that country, on the ground that they cannot and do not believe in the dogmas of Christianity. Talking about white Jesus. We didn't believe in that crap. Let me show you something. I know some of y'all get confused about Russia. The horizon history of Russia. The horizon history of Russia. Let's go. I'm going to page 20. I want you to look at, who is this? In an 11th century Byzantine manuscript, Princess Olga of Kiev, widow of Igor, is pictured at the emperor's court in Constantinople, where she was royally welcomed about 957 as Russia's first Christian ruler. What do y'all see? What is the complexion of these people. You mean it was a fire that burned up the back too? Because they'll say, oh, it was fire darkening their skin. So what about the turbans they got on? What about these head coverings? How come the fire didn't jump there or in the background? Dummies. First Christian emperor here. The Jews and Moors in Spain by Joseph Kraskow. I'm going to start right here on the second day. If I can just focus this. On the second day of January 1481, the Inquisition commenced operation in the city of Seville, that's Spain, with Thomas de Torquemada as Inquisitor General of Castile and Aragon. A few years later, it found its way into every prominent town of Spain and confined itself everywhere almost wholly to the Jews. The severity and savage alacrity of it may best be learned from the appalling fact that during the 18 years of Torquemada's ministry, an average of more than 6,000 convicted persons suffered annually from the cruel tribunal by burning or by condemnation to lifelong slavery or by endless torture, making an average of nearly 17 a day, and the entire number punished during an existence in Spain from 1481 to 1808 amounted to 340,000 persons. All this to protect the interest of religion. All this for offenses so trivial that all this to protect the interests of religion. All this for offenses so trivial that our blood boils with indignation at the very thought of the heinous cruelty. It was sufficient to burn a convert as a relapsed heretic upon the mere accusations of crimes such as these: that he wore better clothes or cleaner linen on the Jewish Sabbath than any other days of the week, that he had no fire in his house on the Jewish Sabbath, that he ate the meat of animals slaughtered by Jews, that he abstained from eating pork, that he gave his child a Hebrew name, and yet he was prohibited by law under severe penalties from giving a Christian name. So our people were tormented and tortured for keeping God's commandments. All right, now you saw it for yourself. They enslaved us from the time of Spain all the way up. That was 1441, all the way up. Okay, and nothing has changed pretty much. Nothing has changed, just the shackles is off our neck. Now, let me show you that in the Bible. Before I get to the clip, I got to lay the foundation that we are the Israelites and we were enslaved because of our sins. So let's go to Deuteronomy chapter 28, and I'm going to read verse 15, and it reads, "But it shall come to pass, if thou wilt not hearken unto the voice of the Lord thy God, to observe to do all his commandments and his statutes, which I command thee this day, that all these curses shall come upon you and overtake you." Let's read some of these curses so you know that we are the people of the book. We are the children of Israel, the 12 tribes. Verse 41, "Thou shalt begat sons and daughters, but thou shalt not enjoy them, for they shall go into captivity." Verse 48, "Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies," keyword enemies, "which the Lord shall send against thee." The Lord sent Rome against us. He sent Spain, Portugal, America against us, Europeans against us. Let's read verse 48 again. "Therefore shalt thou serve thine enemies, which the Lord shall send against thee, in hunger and in thirst, and in nakedness," meaning food, water, clothing, And in want of all things, if you want anything, that includes education, that includes if you want to know something about God, religion, you got to go to your enemies. And he shall put a yoke of iron upon thy neck until he have destroyed thee. Now, we had yokes of iron on our neck, right? You know that history. But notice the last few words. Until he have destroyed thee. 5 words. The yokes of iron have come off our neck. What does that prove? We've been destroyed as a people. Destroyed mentally. Destroyed spiritually. You think you're free. You walking around in a cage thinking you're free, but you're destroyed mentally and spiritually. Verse 68. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again. The word Egypt means tribulation, captivity, slavery. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. How did we get to America? With ships. How did we get to England? With ships. How did we get to Jamaica? With ships. How did we get to Haiti? With ships. How did we get to Mexico? With ships. Central America? With ships. South America? With ships. And the Lord shall bring thee into Egypt again with ships. By the way whereof I spake unto thee, thou shalt see it no more again. Meaning we wouldn't see ancient Egypt no more again. And there, once we got off the ships, ye shall be sold unto your enemies. What's that word? Enemies. For bondmen, meaning slave men, and bondwomen. And no man shall buy you, meaning no man shall redeem you from that curse. The only redeemer is Jesus Christ, and I'm going to show you that in a little bit.